to Wow No Take These Guys with Naomi Guy and
Joel guy.
there we go. That took you a while. This is a podcast where we talk about sex, dating, relationships, and Audrey Lowry. So this week is a part two. Last week we really dug into her transition from being a diehard atheist to a Byzantine Catholic with 3 kids, one on the way. So that's pretty awesome. This week we will be discussing some other things. So stay tuned and listen in. I feel like I'm like a radio announcer.
Wow, really, really queuing them up. You know, you listen to Dr. Orletsky's speech about essay writing, where he's like, tell them what you're going to tell them what you're telling them, tell them what you told them. And he just repeated that like 15 times.
I had him for geometry. What? I thought you had him for physics. Why was he talking
I don't
about
remember. Audrey, do you remember any of this?
I did not have him as a teacher, so I can thankfully exclude myself from this.
You're probably better off for that.
Did you have the neo-Nazi, or was that after you left?
Not knowingly. Goodness. I mean, honestly, maybe. But
Naomi, do you want to share that story? I don't know if we've shared that with our
listeners.
Yeah.
So I think it was 2016 or 2017. I think it was after you graduated. There was a junior class at our high school, which will remain unnamed for legal purposes.
Allegedly
this happened. This physics teacher had been teaching for a quarter, not even a full semester. And at the end of the quarter, he was like, it's movie day. You guys have already taken the final. So we're going to do a movie on the last day of class. Well, the movie was portraying some very, interesting facts about where
geocentric facts.
I was gonna walk around the subject, and it basically was like everything the opposite of what he had in the curriculum, and he was also bald, and it was very weird, and so he got kicked out. And so
no, you're missing the forest for the trees, Naomi. The movie was about geocentrism and how the reason we think the sun's the center of the universe is because of the Jews. That's the neo-Nazi aspect. The other thing was there was a physics teacher at our school named Dr. Orletsky who had his head completely shaved because like he was balding, and that was a look like he rocked. And many physics teachers who were coming in would try to ingratiate themselves with the students by also shaving their heads to look more like Mr. Orletsky. And this guy did this, and everyone was like, he's trying too hard. He wants to be liked like Mr. Orletsky. No, it was because he was a neo-Nazi. It was because he was a Nazi.
I think it was really funny.
Straight up.
They have limits. So like they'll get rid of the neo-Nazi teacher, but they won't get rid of the pedophiles that are actively having relationships with them.
I was really thinking about that. Yeah. That is a really good observation. And
oh my God. Was she in your year?
Wow, this is quite a situation I'm in. Maybe allegedly, what was the words we're using? That's a complicated situation.
There was one in a year above me, and then there was one in a year under me. And the one that was in the year under me, was pregnant, like miscarried. Like a teacher's baby.
Yeah. There were a lot of, Andrew and I, got engaged and everything the year after we graduated, and a lot of other stuff also became public regarding our graduating class the year after we graduated. So it kind of distracted a little bit.
So not everyone was talking about you. They were talking about the drama as a whole for the graduating class.
Like I said, everybody just assumed I was pregnant and asked when I was due. And that was pretty much the long and the short of it. Yeah.
See, Audrey was a topic of gossip because she was dating someone her own age compared to everybody else in the graduating
literally
class.
For once, though. I have no right to judge that particular part of this equation.
It's so funny because I was very open about sex, and people would come to me and ask me questions, sexual education questions, and they weren't even oh, like, are you a dominatrix? Like that kind of, it was like, it wasn't even that. It was just like questions that couldn't be answered by like just looking up the internet, looking it up on the internet, because the internet will give you like 40 different answers. So they'd come to me and I'd be like, I'm not a sexual educator, but like, I'll try to talk you through this question. And I was just very open about sex. And so people took that as I'm a whore. And so by the end of high school, I allegedly had over 60 people that I'd had sex with, allegedly. And everyone was like, oh, she's going to get pregnant. Like, she's in this relationship with this older guy. She's going to get pregnant. All of those people who said that are now pregnant.
They were living vicariously through you, Naomi.
Yeah.
When you left, they had to pursue their own path in life.
Yeah, I would say, like I said before, previous podcast, if you missed it, go listen to it. You're missing some scandals. But I had, not allegedly, in real life, over 100 sexual partners before I turned 18. And I was very similar, Naomi. I was also very open talking with people about sex. I drove people on the back of my little scooter to get condoms from the Walmart. I brought people condoms to school. I did all kinds of stuff. And I will say something that seems to really be elusive to people is like, you can have a lot of sex and not get pregnant. Like that's a thing we can do. Like, and that's part of the power of knowledge, right? Like, I had that many sexual partners, had sex more times than the number of sexual partners, and managed to not get pregnant that entire time. And like, I am not worried about being called a whore, being called a slut. I'm not worried about any of those things because the facts are the facts and that's what they are. And I don't need to make, judgment-based labels on a teenage girl who is, just trying to get through high school. But I will say that there's something very powerful about not only being a sexually active person who is in control of your own, bodily autonomy, right? So when you get pregnant, when you don't, but also having the knowledge to inform your sexual encounters and help support others. And that's something you should be unapologetic about. Like, honestly, if being able to talk to people, especially, teenagers, confidently about like sexual safety and like sexual realities in a safe and compassionate way makes me a whore, like absolutely give me a button or like a name tag or something, right? Like I am on board. I really don't understand
I'm a slut because I can talk about sex.
Yeah, like, I mean, I probably, whatever qualifications you use to define if someone is a whore or a slut, I probably meet them. Like, honestly, I probably do. I'm not like too worried about it. And I don't know at what point in my life I became comfortable with the fact that like, people have probably surprised by me, even, like, secular folk, right? I hang out in Catholic circles. Those people are horrified. Not actually.
You make the conversation spicy.
Yeah, I do. And I'm not shy. It's my poor husband, honestly. Like I'll be meeting with people like after Divine Liturgy, which is like Mass. Just meeting like, people who are visiting the parish. We have a very small parish, like 20, 30 people. And I'm like, so yeah. And they're like, oh, you weren't always Catholic. And I'm like, yeah, no, I wasn't. Like, oh, what happened? I was like, oh, well, first I was sexually trafficked. I'm like, what? Who are you? I was like, yeah. And like, I had all these sexual partners. I did all these things. And they're like, what is going on? Like, and she also has like 2 toddlers. I don't understand. Who is this woman? What is she? Why is her hair purple or pink or whatever color it decided to be that week? Like, honestly, I can't wrap my head around it. But I think whore I can accept.
I would presume that Catholics would appreciate having you around because it's like, look, our religion is so good. We can convert people from their lives of sin.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, this should be like a win for your parish. Like,
no, really absolutely. Let me be clear. My parish, especially, super loves me. My priest loves me, and does not judge me. I have never, in my particular parish that I'm in now, felt excluded or unwelcome or in any way that I needed to censor myself in my particular parish. I will say that has not always been the case. And, people, as a convert, I always feel like I need to remind both the Catholics and the non-Catholics in the conversation about like Catholics historically, infamously, whatever, being prudish, judgmental, closed off about sex, and frankly, causing a lot of trauma and sexual violence to women outside of like clerical abuse, right? Like outside of priests harming people who trust them. Like the things that the Catholic Church and other Christian folk have reinforced over history has done immeasurable harm to women and men in sexual relationships. That's a fact. You can see it everywhere. And we need to acknowledge that and also recognize people's real religious trauma. That again, like I said in the last podcast, I don't have religious trauma because I was raised by atheists. So I have my own baggage. But there are definitely people who are so happy that I feel safe in a Catholic environment. Absolutely. And we're like, yes, welcome home, welcome here. Like, we're all broken misfits, whatever. That's definitely like good. But I would be remiss to affirm like the idea that that's how all Catholic circles are, especially amongst mothers and parents, and things like that. Like, young Catholics between 20 and 25, discerning marriage. We'll talk to them a little bit about sex in a widespread way, in terms of chastity, right? But we don't talk about like in Catholic pre-cana, right? So we have a very long premarital process, lots of classes and things. There's very little, depending on your natural family planning class, there's very little discussion of the mechanics of human sexuality, despite the fact that most Catholics who were raised Catholic did not get sexual education, right? And then there's no discussion, in my experience, of sexual pleasure during these like instructional classes about sex and the mechanics of it, right? So like, no, there's definitely like valid things to say about Catholic communities and circles and how we treat and talk about sex, especially with women. St. Augustine, famous dude who had a lot of company of women, and is pretty known for it. And, then he had a conversion, right? And, repented. He was a party animal. And then he's like, that's not me anymore, y'all.
Stole the pears.
Yeah. And there's women who are canonized who also have experiences like that. Mary of Egypt being a very prominent one in the Byzantine Catholic community. She was a sex worker. And I think that there's absolutely a liturgical, theological, biblical basis for really being able to delve into conversations with women about their sexual realities, but those conversations are not being had widely. And it's a disservice. And they're going to have to happen because now the world is having them, right? Like women are talking about sexual pleasure and their sexual experiences, whether people like it or not. So the church will either have to figure out how to get their panties out of a wad and actually talk to women about their, or like let the secular world do the talking and lead to a lot of, other consequences and things like that. So
I think it's funny. Go ahead.
I think you should avoid being too critical of the Catholic Church because there's always the career option of you joining like the Daily Wire as a commentator, where you go like, I used to be part of the left until they became intolerant, and now I've converted and found my one true God.
Mm-hmm. I think it's totally changing the subject. I think that it's really funny that you bring up like pleasure within marriage, specifically relating to religion, because there's this very large scandal on social media right now on Mormon mom TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And for the listeners that don't know what I'm talking about, or if this comes out 6 months after we record it, and this scandal is long gone, a group of Mormon mothers got together and started content creating together. And recently one of them said that she was getting a divorce and very publicly proclaimed that all of these women involved in this content community were swinging with other people's partners. So that, and she came later, I think it was either yesterday, there was a podcast that came out and she was talking about the fact that around 7 years of marriage, things get dull. And so she thought that swinging was the best way to go about it. The reason why she specifically is getting a divorce is because she decided there was certain rules about swinging with her and her partner and other people's partners that it's a large group of swingers, and she broke one of the rules and had sex without the like permission or without like the not in the safe walls of swinging. It was more of like her own affair type thing. So that is why she is personally getting a divorce. But she really just blew up the whole Utah Mormon community. So, and it's something that like it's not talked about. And I don't know enough about the Latter-day Saints to say I know everything about like pleasure and sex and how that goes along with their religion. Obviously, all I know is I grew up with some LDS kids, and there was a lot of them, like in one family or another. That's like all I know. But yeah, totally moving on from that and not scandal. I would love to talk about your friends because in the last podcast we talked about how, and we kind of touched on this earlier, how like you had a large group of people talking about you because you got married so young and you and your partner got like met in middle school and then went to high school together and all this and everyone knew about you. So your friends, the ones that you went to high school with, are they dating? Are they married? What do they think about like everything that's going on? You said you didn't have a lot of support. Everyone was kind of just like, this is crazy. What are they doing now?
Yeah. Well, Tina, I specifically asked her if I could name drop her. So I'm name dropping Tina. Because I asked her because I was like, okay, who from high school do I know well enough that I could talk about their relationship and it wouldn't be weird? And she knew I was coming on the podcast. So I was like, this is a good opportunity. So I asked her and she said, oh yeah, of course. Spill my dirty laundry. And the funny, she has none, but she's in a happy long-term relationship with a guy she met freshman year of college. He's older. I think he might have been a junior her freshman year of college. He could have been a senior though. I don't know. And they're very happy. She's pursuing her PhD at USC in Los Angeles. So they live together. He is an engineer who works. This is not my world. He like doesn't work for a company, freelance, I guess. He like makes designs and then sells the patents, I think. So he works on making like really fancy bikes. That's kind of what his project is right now. So he makes really cool stuff, sells it for a lot of money, and then makes something else cool. And that's kind of how he makes his living.
Is she considering marriage or?
Yeah. They are planning on kind of following the more commonplace way of things. Tina is an atheist. All my friends in high school were atheists. Like I said, no Christian friends really. So she's an atheist. And so marriage wasn't like super a big part of what was in her priorities, like her, reasons for living, why she does what she does. And so for them, marriage is not like a super essential part of their expression of love for one another. They do that in other ways. And commitment as well. They've made verbal commitments to each other that mean just as much to them. So they do plan on getting married after she finishes her PhD, which is pretty common, waiting for grad school to be done. And then if I recall correctly, she's interested in having children. She's kind of not super firm on it, but likely would have kids maybe late 20s, probably more likely early 30s is kind of like her idea. 1 or 2 kids. I feel like that is what is most frequently people's plan in my world, at least. Like, oh yeah, okay, we'll date, and then once we get out of grad school and we have like reasonable amount of money, we'll have a wedding, because that's what you do. And then if they decide they want to have kids, great. I have friends who are all over the board partially because of my transition from atheism to Catholicism. I have Catholic friends, I have atheist friends, I got a lot of stuff in between. So I have dear friends who matter a lot to me, who have had sterilization procedures, like, tubules or something like that. I don't have any male friends who've had vasectomies. I need to collect some of those. But, I have female friends who have decided that they, at a fairly young age, like 21, 22, that they're not interested in children and took permanent steps to prevent that possibility. But I also have friends who are married. One of my other really close friends, Katie, she was not in my circle in high school. We met when I was about 20, around the time I had my first kid. And she also had a kid around the same time. Unfortunately, in that situation, the circumstances, it was an unintentional pregnancy, and it was, I should say, unplanned pregnancy. And it was also an unfortunate circumstance that led to the pregnancy. Not quite a sexual assault by any means, but it's like a complicated, messy situation. And so there was custody battles and messy and lawyers, like even while she was still pregnant, and she was also in college, trying to navigate this with her, a really, really bad dude trying to control her as much as he could, and using all of the powers at his disposal, including, her child and her body, and using the law to manipulate her. And it was awful and terrible. And then, she gave birth, had to do a custody battle after she gave birth. And then she found her now husband, who is an incredible, incredible person. They're godparents to one of my kids. And they also got married really quickly after they met, because from his perspective, he was like, I want to start being who I am to you now. We are in a different place of life because you are a mother with a child, and you need support, and you're not getting that from your world. And I know that I am that person. I want to be that person, feel called to be that person. So I'm going to be that person for you. So I have friends who are kind of all over the place. And I just am so in love with watching their journeys unfold, and really watching people figure stuff out. That's one thing I love about being in my 20s, is just everybody is sorting through their crap, and even the married people. That is something I think people don't understand. And they talk about this in pre-canon a lot, and I'm sure for secular folk, when you get married, if you read books or something about marriage, they bring it up. You get married, you bring all your baggage with you. Nothing changes. So if you didn't get the therapy or seek the counseling or do the work beforehand, well, now you've chained yourself to someone else, and you have to do the work, and it becomes so much more pressure because you're in a much more confined space. And so there's definitely pros and cons to doing it with someone, and being able to work together as a team, but also they're being impacted by every decision you make. All the struggles, all the drama, all the baggage is also, splashing on them, and they're implicated in that mess. So that's one of the things I love about being in my 20s. At first it was painful watching people, especially in college, make a lot of the mistakes that I made in their early 20s, right? Going into, well, even 18, 19, first couple of years of college. It's having a lot of really bad, empty sex and being like, what am I doing wrong? I think a lot of people go through that. I sure did. And it just gets messy and political and gnarly. And so I love watching people come out of that, develop healthy habits, and come up with I keep going back to reasons for living, right? And reasons for behaving the way they behave. It's awesome. And that's one of the reasons I like romance novels too, because I can't get enough of how other people, process their own romantic and sexual realities. It's great.
Well, it's the whole, you need experience to make good judgments, but you only get experience by making bad judgments. And so, I think that's one of the benefits of dating long term and, waiting and delaying marriage, is that you sort of build up this internal knowledge base of, what to expect in relationships, what your likes and dislikes are, how you handle, past trauma and whatnot. And there's definitely a benefit, I think, of marrying young. But yeah, it's kind of scary not having all the tools in your toolbox. You can't just go to the hardware store and, pick up therapy. You have to spend the time and energy in order to work through that stuff. It's not something that's easily absorbed and easily utilized.
All I was gonna say to your comment about like watching people do like have the same go through the same mistakes that you went through, Joel, to your point, you're completely correct. Like they need to have those experiences in order to actually learn. But when you have gone through those experiences and you're watching people make the same stupid decisions that they saw you make, it feels like you're in a glass box and you're screaming at them. You're like pounding on the wall and you're just like, stop fucking doing this. And they just won't listen. Yeah, it's a different type of torment.
Yeah, certainly. And I think also, adding a layer that y'all might not personally experience is like, obviously a lot of my current reasoning, rationality for, my the way I engage with romance, but also like my sexual expression is informed by religion. So I'm very careful because a lot of my friends are not religious. And I take a lot of great care in assuring them that like I'm not out to get souls, like I'm not like knocking down their door for Jesus. Like that's not how I came into Catholicism, and it's also not my prerogative. Like I don't think it's my duty in life to like bring people to Christ or something like that. I think there's like other stuff I'm supposed to be doing. So and other ways that happens if it happens. So I have to be careful because I don't want to come off as if I'm making a moral judgment when it's not really a moral judgment at all. When I think about, people making sexual choices or even, engaging in particular romantic situations that I think are like problematic, dangerous, not a good idea, messy. It's important for all of us, I think, but especially for those of us who have particular like religious stated, proclamations, to just be clear that like this is not a judgment thing. Like I don't think you're a bad person, like we talked about earlier. I don't think you're a whore, right? Like that's not what this is about. It's just like I don't want to see you get hurt. I'm watching like this situation right in front of me, and it's like I'm watching a train crash, and I just want to like help you not do that, and avoiding the moral judgments.
I don't know if that's a unique aspect of being Catholic, because I think a lot of people just want unconditional support for their decisions. They don't want to hear that, the decisions they're making are incorrect, because, that's very difficult to hear from people you care about. You want the people you care about to, want what's best for you. And if you think what's best for you, you want their support in that regard. And so, this is one of those reasons it's so difficult to talk about abusive relationships with people, because when you say, hey, is he hurting you? People are like, what are you talking about? No, this is how he expresses his love. This is, how he cares for me. It's how he shows that I'm his and he's mine and whatnot. And so, one of the techniques I think we've talked about on the show, maybe an episode we haven't released yet, is when you're talking to someone who you're concerned about, speak in hypotheticals where you're like, boy, would you accept that behavior, an ex relationship? Would you be okay if you saw that being, demonstrated? And, try not to call them out and, try not to display any form of judgment, because ultimately, it's their lives and it's totally possible you have it completely wrong. But even if you don't, like, they're still not going to listen to you. So you have to package it in the most appropriate, not mentally scarring way possible, which is deeply frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I have really struggled with. I was in a age gap. It wasn't a large age gap, but there was an age gap there. Relationship for about 4 years with someone who didn't treat me very well, and seeing now the relationships that I have with my close friends and their romantic relationships, I see those red flags before they do, or even when they are like actively complaining to me and they're like, this is what he's done and this is what he's saying to me, and I go about it in the sense of like the way that I think I would have needed it at that point, which was like, you just tell them directly how it is. And not everyone responds the best to that. So I've had a variety of responses. Some of them being, we can't talk about this anymore, or like, you obviously don't know what you're talking about, or something like that. And I do think that it would be good for everyone involved, including myself, to like almost train myself to go about it in a more sensitive way. Because that's not the way that might have worked for me, would not be the way that works for my friends in those situations.
I think the other thing, and this is why it's so important to talk about abuse, is people can have abusive aspects of their personality or relationship without being quote unquote abusers. So like somebody might be financially controlling of their partner, and they might do this without having any of the bad intentions of, wanting to withhold money and resources from somebody. And it's, a matter of having that conversation and discussing how this could impact them, that could potentially change their behavior. And so they're like, oh, you're right, that was a shitty thing for me to do. I'm going to change my behavior moving forward. And I think a lot of people need to understand, there really isn't a comprehensive textbook and guide for being the perfect partner. And there's going to be a lot of things that vary relationship to relationship, which is, part of what comes with dating multiple people and identifying, risk factors and things you're tolerant of. But those conversations do need to happen so that people are ready to, confront these things before they blossom into even bigger issues. Just because somebody is exhibiting one negative personality trait doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to become, a horrible whatever, but it is a warning sign that, needs to be confronted at some point.
Totally changing the subject, if you don't mind. Audrey, you are a mother to two almost, well, three technically. You're not mothering that quite yet. I guess in a way you kind of are.
Naomi needs to training on talking to pregnant people.
I would love to talk to you about being a mother, because we have talked to other guests about their parenting experience, but that particular guest is a co-parent. So he does not live with his baby's mother. And so he had a different experience, obviously, parenting than you do, because you see your children all the time, obviously. So is there anything that like you would love to like advice, or like some pros and cons, if you'd like to do it that way? Like just talking about being a young parent. Obviously, you said you got married and then you got pregnant on your honeymoon, which was a surprise. But yeah, just talk a little bit about parenting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, parenting is, we talk a lot, especially right now, the cultural conversation, people talk a lot about like forced birth, forced parentage, things like that. So I do really want to take a moment to acknowledge that, like, number one, parenting is not for everyone. It's not something I advocate for everybody, just like what I said about marriage. Like, it is impossibly difficult, and it will drive you to places that you did not realize you might have to go, and lead to difficulties that you might not expect. You're forced into a position, or not forced, because you're choosing it for yourself, right? Ideally. But you are sort of stuck, I should say. You can't get out of this relationship that requires selflessness all the time. And you're in this constant tug of war with, I'm a person. Like, I have an Instagram caption that I used once that is like, I have to remind myself of sometimes, which is like, moms are people too, right? I'm a person. And I'm a caretaker. And I'm also a lot of other things. And you have to be all those things at once. But there's, however many children you have, whether it's 1, 2, 6, 10 people who are relying on you, not only for like basic needs, like, food, water, shelter, whatever, but also like emotional development, social development, And you have intentional things that you do there, right? Teaching them not to hit people, stuff like that, right? But also your behavior is the number one influential factor that determines their character. So if you're a crappy person and you don't have your crap together, that's going to get on them. It's not only going to hurt them because you're in a relationship with them, because children are also people, but it's also going to make them worse people. Like, you're going to teach them problematic bad behaviors. If you scream at your kids all the time, they're going to scream at other people because that's how they learned to talk to other people. If you, all kinds of stuff, like there's all of your behaviors will be mirrored. Children are a mirror. And if you aren't prepared for that reality, and to be clear, no one is ever like ready to be a parent. Like, there's no moment where you're like, all right, I'm done. I have, come to my full form and I'm ready to procreate and create little perfect people. That's not really what I mean. What I mean is, are you prepared to hold yourself to that standard? Are you prepared to call yourself out? Are you prepared to be humble and constantly check yourself and say, am I being a piece of crap right now? Like, because the thing is, your children, for a long time, like my toddler, my oldest is 3. She's just kind of getting to an age where she can call me on my crap. And by that, I mean, like, if I, get frustrated and start to like raise my voice, she'll look at me and she's like, Mama, you're yelling at me. And I'm like, you're right, I am yelling at you. Before they turn 3, you have to do that yourself, like, and even after they turn 3, like, you need to have a relationship with them such that they feel like they can call you on your crap. Because otherwise you're going to be doing repeated, sometimes irreparable harm to not only your relationship with them, their relationship with other people, how they expect themselves or allow themselves to be treated. Like, there's so much burden there. And a lot of us aren't really ready for that. And even going into parenting, when I decided to get married, be open to life and have sex, and then, conceive a child, like, I had not done all the work that I should have done. I started therapy after my daughter was born. And when I was pregnant, I was constantly haunted by nightmares and pervasive fears of not being able to protect her from the world. And I realized I have a lot of baggage that I need to figure out before I put all this stuff on my kid. I need to figure out how to balance, like, yeah, a lot of terrible things happen, but you don't have to live your life in cowering fear all the time. There's a lot of, you have to get yourself to a place where you can be having these ongoing conversations with yourself, with your kid, with your co-parent, whoever that is, your support system, even, I could say, and continue being accountable. So that's like my number one parenting advice, is just recognize that, like, you are not infallible and you don't have to be. Like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be, and I say that you don't have to because it's not possible. Like, you're never going to get there. You're going to do things that are going to hurt your kid. It's going to happen. The question is, like, can you apologize? Can you work to heal your relationship? And can you strive to be better? That's what you need to be able to do. And if you can't do it when you find out you're pregnant, or you find out you're going to be a parent or whatever, are you going to work hard as hell to do that now? Like, do you feel the immeasurable weight that is? Because I think a lot of us, I mean, not necessarily you two specifically, but a lot of us have baggage from our relationships with our parents. Like, we have stuff. Some people have really, really bad stuff, and some people have mild stuff. And whether or not you can have a relationship with them when they're adults is determined like quite heavily by whether or not you're humble enough to hear them tell you what you screwed up. It can be awkward for me to, like, mention to my parents, like, my, like, sexual violence background, right? Because I was a child, and it wasn't by my parents or a family member at all, but there's a sort of, like, tense responsibility there, right? And, like, a lot of, like I said, tension, right? And it's like, how do I have these conversations with my parents about ongoing abuse that I underwent while I was a child under their care, but also like not shun them or cut them out or whatever. And because of, the work that my parents did do on our relationship, we can. And sometimes it's tense and sometimes it's hard because we're people and we have complicated relationships. But like as a parent, like that's what you want, right? You don't want your kid to hit 18, hate you, and run from you for the rest of time. It's really, really crucial from birth, I believe, to see children as people. Because if you treat them as people with respect and autonomy and, inherent value, not only for, their actions, whatever, but also like their desires, right? Their fears, the way their brains work. If you put in that weight and that work, then as they continue to grow up, they will feel valued and respected by you. And that's what allows for a meaningful relationship in any way, whether it's parents or friends or romantic or anything.
I think that's really good advice. I think that's something that we have talked about a little bit. Obviously, we don't have a lot of experience parenting. Joel's is a cat dad, but other than that,
excuse me, I have 2 citrus trees that I have prevented from dying for 2 summers in a row in the Arizona heat, Naomi.
You're right. I'm sorry. You corrected me. But I think that is something that I've also like witnessed a lot. I'm a nanny, so like there's some parents where I will walk into the household and I will spend 5 minutes with them. And to be fair, it could have been a bad day, or it could have been bad day, a bad week. It could have been a bad year. And I just think to myself, this person should not be a parent. And I know that's extremely rude to say, but when you are telling your nanny that you've known for 20 minutes that you don't like being a father, I feel like that says a little bit about you and the way that your parenting style. I had a client recently. He was working from home, and I was taking care of his kids that day because his wife had to go to the office, and the kids were about 2 years apart, and one would stop crying and the other would start crying, and it was just an ongoing all day kind of thing. And obviously the dad was witnessing me struggling to quiet down one child and then have the other one scream. And we were sitting outside, the kids and I, and he walked out on one of his breaks and he was like, I just don't enjoy being a father. Like these were both like these children were both mistakes, and I don't want to be married anymore. And I was like it was a part of the conversation, but it definitely was not something you should be telling your nanny. So you saying that you have to like consistently be thinking about these things even before you consider having kids, I think is like, but when you start considering having kids, you need to start like asking yourself these questions. Like, am I able to constantly be taking care of another human being? Am I able to constantly be able to like give them love or some sort of affection that they need in order to not, hate me? It's very hard to see kids in that situation.
I think there's an extra layer to it where even if you have all the best intentions and you figured out all the best methods and you have a partner who can hold you accountable and you have a support system in place, all of that can still go topsy-turvy. There's a very real chance, you might lose your job tomorrow and all of a sudden, like, you don't have the financial resources to support your child. There's a very real chance that like you and your partner break up. And so like you then have to raise the kid or co-parent the kid, and the kid's put in this weird situation where they're constantly moving between households. And I think this goes to a theme that we keep hammering home for some reason. It may have something to do with the economic situation a lot of people our age are in, but like parents need financial support to give good opportunities to their children, right? We can't just expect that every single parent is going to be in a state where they can provide the resources, whether it's love and affection and time, or even like the educational opportunities to their kids so that they, achieve the best they can. And the unfortunate reality is I'm sure there's, tens of millions of parents out there who care deeply about their kids, who want what's best for their kids, but simply don't have the ability to give them what they're needed in order to like cultivate their minds and, let them know, hey, it's okay sometimes if you call me on my BS and whatnot. I don't know exactly what I'm advocating for, but I think, a lot of people like to talk about how lazy people in poverty are. And it's like 30% of the people in poverty in this country are children, right? Like 30% of people in poverty do not have jobs because they should not have jobs because they're, 5 years old, and like they should not be having to fend for themselves. Even if you hate the fact that, oh my God, this woman had children out of wedlock or whatever. It's like, why would you punish the young mind that's attempting to grow and survive? So yeah, like it's frustrating because there's so much that goes into parenting that's outside of your control. And I think you're right, Audrey, that, in the best case scenario, these are the elements that are needed for success. But again, it's scary to me that so much can go wrong without being able to do as much as you'd like.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And, it kind of circles back to something that I kind of hinted at. I don't remember if it was in this podcast or the one that we recorded previously, but, we don't, like my husband and I specifically, we don't have a lot of money. In fact, we're WIC recipients, which is Women, Infant, and Children. It's a food supplement. So we have like a card, like a SNAP card, like kind of like, it's not food stamps, but it's like food stamps. So we get money from the state of Kansas to help supplement our groceries. It's not all of our groceries. It's supposed to just be like helpful. And we've used WIC since I was pregnant with my first daughter. And WIC is a really incredible resource. But even though, we're 24, we both, like when I got pregnant with Azalea, I was working 60 to 80 hours a week in Arizona. And Andrew was working almost full time at that point. And we've both been working, he finished college. I decided to step away because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with college. And it's just a lot of money to throw it and social obligation. So I stepped away, but he finished college, continued working full time. I worked full time. We did all the things that people claim that, poor people don't do, I guess. And here we are. And we've had some other things, step in our way. My husband had an injury a while back in 2020, late 2020, that led to him. We had like a long-term life plan that got massively derailed. And so he kind of started over with a carpentry apprenticeship. So now he's doing that. And I mean, like you said, Joel, like, yeah, something can always go wrong, right? And that's going to be true in life regardless. And it can be scary, even if children is something that, somebody really wants and feels like, that is something that they want as a part of the fabric of their life. And not only that, but also like a calling, a part of who they are. Even then, because you care about your kids, you can be hesitant to take that risk. Because it's like, I'm gonna really love this person. And that's a risk. If they get hurt, if anything happens to them, it'll wreck me. And it's kind of a similar fear that you would have, thinking about being in a relationship, marriage, serious relationship, kind of the same thing. Like, investing that much of yourself into a person and pledging essentially that much devotion and care to them is wild and difficult. And I think my husband, Andrew, is a really good example of living that out well. He has always worked pretty much our entire relationship, manual labor, physical stuff. Like he's a carpenter right now, but he's working outside all the time, building decks and using power tools and being construction worker dude. And before that, he was a baker, which doesn't sound like it's very work intensive, but it is. Working in food service in any regard is really difficult on your body. And there was a time in our relationship right before his injury where he was working 80 hours a week as a baker to support our family so that I could stay home because COVID and lockdowns and whatever. And we've done crazy stuff to keep our family afloat. And that is a risk that you take when you choose to have kids and a responsibility you take on. But frankly, another thing that I feel passionately about is I don't think it seems classist to me to be like, oh, well, poor people shouldn't have kids. Because as much as we love in this country to talk about like, oh, this is, the American dream, like, oh, we have so much like income mobility, like we all know, at least in our generation, we're like, that is bull crap. Like that is so like ridiculous and classist, and also probably racist when you get down to it. And there's all of this stuff, and I think a lot of people really look down upon people who are low income and then choose to have kids. Like it's inexcusable to think that someone who isn't, so they can meet their basic needs, right? I totally agree, like needing to be able to like feed your family, take care of your kids, meet their basic needs, necessary. But then there becomes a difference of what is an essential for raising someone well and living well. And that's where we differ and vary. And that's where like I start to chafe, because like forget the bourgeoisie, honestly, and their standards for living. Like I just like I can't. And thinking that my kids are having a worse childhood because I can't put them in, like 6 different clubs and activities and whatever, and paid events and all this stuff. Like it's just like they can be well-formed, full human beings without me throwing money at them and into them. So fiscal responsibility, planning, absolutely super important for kids. But I'm always hesitant to jump to like, there's a financial threshold that you have to meet before you can like justifiably say, like, okay, I'm now worthy of having children because I have a certain amount of money. And I think we slide that way, especially in this country. And that's like bootstraps mentality, and also an aversion to social programs and support. Like historically speaking, communities provided a significant amount of support for family living. Community-based like family lifestyles, like it takes a village, that whole concept was like deeply entrenched. Now we're all very individualist and isolated. And because of that, we don't have natural community support, but we also don't have like all those other pieces that made living life possible with kids. Like trying to raise even one child with a 2-parent household without any outside support is incredibly difficult, no matter how much money you have. And social programs aren't the only solution to that, but are a big part of it. And really trying to understand the needs of families and children and continuing to show up for them, and really demonstrating culturally like, no, we really do care about people. Because I feel like folk on the left who are, people on the right will be like, oh, they're not pro-family, right, for whatever litany of reasons, but at least they like care enough to like give us money. Right, like, and then on the right, like they're like, okay, yeah, you need to definitely like have a family and like white picket fence and have your babies and whatever, but like we're not gonna help you. Like you just have to figure it out, and like you're a bad person if you don't have kids, and you're a bad person if you choose not to have a family, and we're gonna criticize and make moral judgments on single mothers, unintentional pregnancies, all of that, but we're not going to do anything to help you either. Like you get what you deserve, right? I think that mindset is toxic and insidious, kind of throughout the parties. I think both parties have a bad habit of like, you've gotten what you deserve. Like children are not consequences. Even when people have, unintended or unplanned pregnancies, like their children are not consequences. They're people. And I'm not talking necessarily about like anything other than it's not okay, like what Naomi was saying, like our generation, the generations near us, feel this weight of a lot of people's parents call them accidents or mistakes. And you feel that. Like
the phrase whoopsie baby is common in our family.
Yeah. And it seems silly sometimes to be hurt by that, because it's like, what do I care? Like, I'm here, aren't I? Like, but like, it's also a certain sense, at least I felt, and I've kind of processed this, especially after having kids, of like, I always knew that my parents didn't want kids. My parents found out they were pregnant. My mom found out she was pregnant with me when she was 24 weeks. She lived in Louisiana. So she had no other options but carrying me to term. And there's a sense of like, you kind of have to prove that you weren't a mistake, right? Like, I have to prove that you don't regret the time that you invested in me and all this stuff. Like, that's, and my parents, to be clear, this is not me criticizing my particular parents. Like, like I said, parents are people. So, we all have, complicated things, but like, going into having my own kids, I was like, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that they know that they're not consequences, they're not liabilities, and they don't have anything to prove to me. Like, my approval is not a qualifier on whether or not their life is worth having or living. And they were not a mistake or an accident. And it's not fair to put that on a baby. And and we don't do it on purpose necessarily a lot of the time, right? But we do. And that happens too, even when we shame, single mothers, people who had babies outside of traditional relationships, like, like they should have known better, they should have been more whatever, proactive, whatever. Like, a lot of that starts to fades their child out of personhood as a toddler, kid, whatever, and more as like a liability that's now limiting their potential.
I knew someone when I was going to the school that will remain unnamed. And this person was so sure that she was an oopsie baby that she had the full story. Apparently, her father and her stepmom had a fight on Valentine's Day, and her dad went to a bar, had casual sex with another woman during his fight with his wife. They conceived a child, and that was the girl that I knew. And she was just so thoroughly like, this is what happened. And my mom told me I was supposed to be a cum shot, excuse my French. And you know what I mean? And that was just like, it was her personality at that point. And her mom did end up convert. This is actually one of the LDS people that I knew, which is really funny. But her mom was a single mom, and she was openly cussed out on a weekly basis when going to her father's house and seeing like her stepmom, because her stepmom was like, you are the product of an affair that happened so many years ago, and you were not supposed to be here and a part of my marriage to my husband. And that like obviously has such a traumatic impact on an individual. Like, if someone were to say to you, if it be your mother, your father, your stepmother, all these things, that's not going to help your life. That's not going to be like, wow, well, I should be better. It's not going to, if anything, it's not going to make the person improve. It's going to give them a trauma like response to this. And they'll just have an awful relationship with their parents. Like, she did not have a good relationship with any of her parents. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I talk about anxieties about having enough financial resources to support a child, it's because my hope would be anybody who wants to have kids is thinking in a similar way. I get anxious when I don't feel my cat is provided for. If he doesn't like his food and is refusing to eat, or if like his water bowl is getting empty, or if he wants to go outside but the pavement is too hot. And those are things that bother me. And right, I think most people would say that an average human infant has slightly more value than a cat. But my hope would be that, they're thinking in a similar way, that you need to be fully committed to, dedicating as much as you can to your child and wanting them to be, happy and successful. So to your point, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having kids, if you don't make a certain income cutoff. I think my concern would always be, coming at this again from an outside perspective and not having kids, that I just can't offer them the opportunities that I would want them to always have, because we can look at maps across this country and it's like, if you live in a certain zip code, you will have this income, right? And we know that wealthier people have all sorts of financial tips and tricks that are inaccessible to average people about, moving your money around and your Roth IRAs and your ability to cleverly avoid taxes and transfer assets from one to another. And I had always feel that they're disadvantaged. And so, I think what you're saying is true, that it's classist and to a degree racist to say people under a certain income level shouldn't have kids. And that's something we should definitely fight against. But that only goes to the idea that kids are undeserving of all of the abuse they get from society. And so we need to be providing them those resources, even if we strongly disagree with, the configuration of the relationship, whether it's a single parent or a gay couple or a polyamorous couple or a trans couple or whatever. The kids should not be suffering for, want of whatever, that they should be given the greatest resources possible. Now, of course, I'm talking in some crazy hypothetical world because that's not the world in which we live, but that's one I'd like to live in. And that's one I think we can aspire to.
So we have just passed an hour in recording. I would like for us to do a lightning round. Joel, would you like to start this lightning round?
Audrey, are you ready for this?
I'm as ready as I will ever be for this.
We'd like to know a little more about your likes and dislikes. So what is your favorite movie? We've discussed some of your media interests before, but what's a movie you consider really good that other people should enjoy?
The movie that I've always said is my favorite movie is Juno. 100%, no doubt about it. I can recite the entire thing start to finish. I've probably seen it over 100 times.
Incredible. I was just listening to a podcast about POWs in World War II, and then the Vietnam War, and they would do like movie recreations to entertain themselves in POW camps. It's like, remember this movie? Well, we're going to recreate it with props and people playing different actors and whatnot. That was apparently a really big thing. So I don't want you to be a POW, but I would really enjoy the space of someone who's a POW play acting all of Juno from start to finish.
Okay. I can agree that would be interesting to watch. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of low budget films, especially those that are like remakes of other films where somebody has the dedication, but not the financial budget to, give the illusion of place that a full budget production might have.
This is the longest lightning round.
Go ahead, Naomi.
Favorite TV show at the moment?
At the moment, I'm not a huge TV person because I'm super lame. I really think Ted Lasso is good for society. I think that the world would benefit from watching Ted Lasso because it's like balm for the soul. So I would probably start there.
Okay.
Favorite book?
Wow, what a question. You asked, that was at the bottom of the little sheet that you guys gave me to prepare myself, and I giggled at it for a while and went through all my Goodreads reviews. I would say my favorite read for this year is Hellfire by Marielle Palmori. She's an indie author. She's self-published on Kindle. It is a dark romance, so read the trigger warnings. It's an incredible exploration of trauma. It's her debut novel, so it's her first book. She's also just like an incredible person, and it was my first real dark romance that I read. I've now read it twice this year, and I just can't get enough of it. It's like high fantasy, so it's really complex, but also delves into a lot of the like trauma healing themes, and it's good for people who have daddy issues. So if you have daddy issues, I can't recommend it enough.
Moving past that,
what an endorsement.
Favorite food?
I hop around. I'm kind of one of those people who I like binge eat stuff for like a week, like that's the only thing I eat, and then the next week I eat something else. So recently I've been really into like brown rice and then like protein mushrooms.
Okay.
Like, so it could be like chicken, could be like pork, it's whatever we have.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like fake mushrooms that were like
No.
had like protein in them. I was like, what?
No. Protein being some kind of like
Yeah.
often meat,
Yeah.
but not necessarily. Sometimes, you know, beans or whatever. And then that's like kind of like my go-to. But my husband worked as a baker for years. And so like one of my favorite things is when he just like surprise bakes me bread. And then I wake up in the morning because he gets up super early still. This morning, I was unconscious and he woke me up by like putting a plate of warm bread in front of me that had butter on it.
That's
and
a nice
I was
life
like,
you live.
yeah, I was like, good morning. And he's like, good morning. And then he just leaves.
He
Like,
wanted you to enjoy your bread in peace.
Yeah, surprise bread products, I would say, are the way to my heart if I had to narrow it down.
Joel, do you have any last lightning round questions?
I did have one last question. Audrey, who's your favorite sibling? That's right. It's the return of Way Too Personal, the only podcast game show within a game show, within a podcast. I really butchered that intro. I don't think we've seen this for like 20, 25 episodes. No. What a surprise. Audrey, I don't know how well versed you are in the guy sibling podcast game show series, but Way Too Personal is me reading personal ads from different areas of the country, and you have to guess which area of the country it's from. This week, I've selected a number of Craigslist personal ads from Kansas and from Arizona, mostly the Phoenix area. Okay. And you have to decide if the way people talk about love in a given area is indicative of Phoenix or indicative of the broader Kansas region.
I'll tell you
questions
right now,
before we begin?
I'll tell you right now, I have a little bit of a heads up because Kansas, huge issue, syphilis. So I'm telling you right now, if syphilis comes up, it's Kansas for sure.
Okay.
100%.
Last time we played this, it was with my partner, and it was here in California, like Phoenix in California, and one of them was a guy sniffing another woman's farts in Whole Foods, and we were like, that's got to be California.
I gotta say, this is going to be more difficult than the California questions because almost all of the California personals are gay men looking for other gay men. They're very, very open about that. That's very rare in like the Phoenix Craigslist personals. So this is a little different. And without further ado, let us begin. I think I have 8 this week. So Naomi, there's lots of opportunities for you to score points.
Okay.
Audrey, I really want you to kick my sister's butt. Okay. First one. The post title is Postal Carrier. I might have a serious crush on my female carrier. She is very attractive and very polite. She always has been. I just want to say hello. She's not always on my route, but I have the utmost respect for her. Anyways, I doubt she'll ever see this. I'm on the dead-end street with a black Charger, ma'am. Is that Kansas or Arizona?
I'm going to say Arizona.
Here's the thing, like, so Midwestern to say that you have the utmost respect for your, postwoman. So, like, honestly, I feel like in my experience, Arizona folk are not so courteous.
But the black Charger really just did me. I know you have black Chargers in Kansas, but like we have black Chargers in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I'll go with Kansas just to split the board.
It is Kansas. It is Neosho, Kansas.
Oh, Neosho. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Second one. Fishnet Latina. Jeez. Quit spending your energy and time, brother. There's not been an actual woman submitting on this community forum since you were still rocking Junkos and talking on the flip phone. The only person you're going to encounter here are gay men catfishing you for dick information. I'm informing you to get verified so they can then steal your hard-earned money. There's only one lovemaking community remaining that truly works for finding hookups. That particular name is Bang Pals. Just put that in your internet browser or run a web search. Best part is that Bang Pals is kept hidden so the feds and scammers keep out. I don't know how considerably longer Bang Pals will last, which means you'd better enjoy it while you still can.
Is dick information like a dick pic, or is it like how long your schlong is?
I want extensive stats.
I assume there's like phones now where have you like thumbprint verification. They're like, no, you need to use your genitals to unlock it. So people are looking to, get into your
Drop
devices.
your balls on it on your phone screen every time you want to open it.
But yes, is that going to be Arizona area or Kansas?
I vote Arizona because Kansas people aren't as internet focused or internet savvy. So like an app or a special website or a program, like that's not going to do as well here. Like I work a lot with patients over 65, and most of them don't have a computer in their home, often don't have Wi-Fi. That's pretty common. And obviously younger people are more likely to, but like, I just feel like this is a little bit too hip with the times.
Fair enough. That is Phoenix. So that's 1 for Naomi, 2 for Audrey. That is Phoenix, Arizona. This is so
hard. I just realized that every single time we do a game show, the other person has the advantage because she's lived here and in Kansas, and I don't think I've ever been to Kansas.
I don't know if I fully back her interpretation. I think there's good logic there, but I don't know if it's 100%. I think people are just weird, and I don't know if there's a good way of parsing if it's Kansas weird or Phoenix weird.
That's fair.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the suggestion. Thanks for the recipe suggestion. Always good to get new ideas on how to do pasta. Thanks. And sorry I didn't get your number. What was the pasta we spoke about?
Wait, I'm sorry. He said, thank you for the pasta recommendation, but then what was the pasta? So he just wasn't listening.
I know. I think he's like, if someone does follow up with me, I want to know what was that specific pasta we were discussing. He doesn't do dick image verification. He does pasta.
I'm going to say Kansas. I'm going to throw a curveball. I'm going to say Kansas.
I would agree because I think that Midwesterners big on recipe sharing. Huge.
I'm sorry, ladies. That is Gilbert, Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah. Shauna and Dave, we met on the trail and talked for a half hour. The rock you gave me is iron slag, probably from a steel plant. Nice meeting you two. Talk about the RD we talked about sometime. Let me know when you go.
Wow. Arizona. A steel plant. Does Arizona have that?
That's a good question. I would hope so. We have industry. Don't look at us like that.
I mean, I'm living in Kansas. I'm not judging you for your industry. I would say, but there's not a lot of hiking here. I'll go with Arizona.
Sorry again. That is Independence, Kansas.
What?
Independence,
yes.
Kansas. Okay.
Just a couple more. Still 1-2. Mayor Pete at the Pig. You were sitting outside reading at the restaurant in the afternoon. We're wearing a Pete Buttigieg shirt. We smiled at one another when you were waiting to go to the bathroom. You were really pretty, and I like books and think the Department of Transportation is awesome.
Oh. I think people don't sit outside here. That's the only thing.
You got a good 6 months a year.
I think Kansas, but I think it's probably going to be like Lawrence because Pete had a big representation here. People were really into Pete. There are Pete signs everywhere. Lawrence is a very progressive town, very blue town. So in the middle of Kansas. So like Naomi? Most of Kansas, I would say that's not accurate, but and also very polite and courteous again, very respectful, not too forward.
Naomi?
I think I'm also gonna go with Kansas.
Do you want to guess Lawrence, Kansas?
No, I don't want to guess Lawrence. I want to guess where I was about to say Alice in Wonderland is from.
Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah.
Topeka?
Topeka? Maybe?
No.
I don't know.
Okay. That is Kansas. In a surprise showing, Audrey, you are the only person to have ever guessed the city correctly for that posting. It is indeed Lawrence, Kansas. I feel that deserves an extra point. Okay, I'm very impressed.
So the city that Dorothy is from is never mentioned, but there is a, like, Dorothy's home is in Wamego, Kansas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
My favorite character from The Wizard of Oz was Pete Buttigieg. I'm surprised a lot of people don't make no references. Okay, Naomi 2, Audrey 4. We got a couple more. It's down to the wire. Rocking them gym clothes. The second I walked in, you crossed my field of view. I know you saw me. The smile I got in the produce section said you liked what you saw as well. The last yet biggest smile you gave me said, come talk to me instead of the self-checkout register. Fail. I think you live in my neighborhood, but I've only seen you the one time. You know who you are. Now I want to know you as well.
Arizona.
Wow. Arizona. Yeah, that's yucky. I really hope that's not in Kansas, or I need to move. I don't like that at all. That person is living out a fantasy that I want no part in.
Wow. Good guesses. That is Deer Valley, Arizona.
No.
Do you guys have
3-5.
gym bros in Kansas? Like, it's a big culture here, like a really big.
That was kind of one of my initial thinkings when he said gym clothes. I was like, no, because we don't really have a big gym culture here at all. Like people are more likely to work trade jobs or live, have more physical, natural lifestyles, or not be gym involved at all. Like we kind of do both of those things, but like gym culture is definitely not really here.
Okay. Old. I said I was old as hell. Tell me how old I was when we met last week. I am male. You are female. I am older than you. Let's talk.
I'm going to go Phoenix again.
I actually think Kansas. I think that Kansas men are blunt and not very charming, but honest. And tell you exactly what they're thinking.
Audrey, your logic so far has been impeccable. That is Manhattan, Kansas.
What
wow.
the fuck? How do you know Kansas so well?
No, Naomi, I think you're right that they have a home field advantage. They have a better idea of like the sort of people who are dating and like the general cultural trends. I'm deliberately excluding like specific references. Several of those posts have made references to fries, which I don't think you have in Kansas.
No.
But beyond that, like you're getting the personality quirks down. You're onto something. Okay, one last one. To make it fair to Naomi, I'll make this one worth 3 points so she can at least tie if you get this wrong. The angel at Walmart. I saw you walking towards me. I just stared as you got closer. And then I asked you if it hurt. And you said, did what hurt? And I replied, when you fell from heaven. I'm the awkward guy with really great dreads, and you're the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. If you see this, reply and tell me what else you said to me. The last words spoken from your beautiful lips, my ears will forever search for what a sweet sound.
Wow.
Arizona.
Oh man, I'm at a loss for words. I'm so uncomfortable. This makes me want to like unplug my Wi-Fi, and like never go to a grocery store again. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna go with Arizona. I don't think that people in Kansas generally use that extent of flowery language. It was very ornate.
Too Shakespearean for Kansas.
It is involved. I don't know. It was very passionate. I really hope that the person he's writing about feels the same way, because then it's okay.
We'll never know. That was Bethany Home in Phoenix, Arizona. So I think we end up with Naomi, you have 6 and Audrey has 9 points. Audrey, I think you take it. I don't know how you feel about that.
I've lived in Kansas for almost 4 years. So I'm happy that I've gained some skill. Even not being involved in the dating world here, and definitely not hip on the online forums. I would
Well, now
say,
you know the only online forum that you need. Bang Pals. Bang Pals. Just type it into your web browser.
I'll start putting up flyers. I think that would help.
Yeah. Get some part-time scratch, advertising for Bang Pals on Craigslist.
Don't put the flyers up near where the feds hang out, okay? We don't need them.
That's a really good point. So that's the last question I had. I'm sorry that lightning round took so long. Naomi, did you have anything else before we wrap up here today?
I would like to thank you, Audrey, for spending your Sunday afternoon with us. Really appreciated catching up, letting us into your words right now are not happening. Letting me hear your love story. I think that's like really fun for me, is like hearing other people's like love stories and how they like came about. like how you got married and how he should have had a better proposal. I hope that everyone listening learned something. Hope everyone has a good week. Audrey, is there anything you would like to say?
No, not in particular. I'm just thankful for y'all taking the time. I know that it can be a little odd to bring in varied opinions and, strange people who you're not sure what's going to come out of their mouth. Because a lot of the identities that I have a lot of loaded expectations, and choices that I've made have a lot of assumptions. And I appreciate y'all not putting that baggage on me, because I really felt like I could speak openly and wasn't too worried about anybody jumping down my throat. So
we'll do our best. Yeah. We'll do our best to edit around it. Yeah, we'll splice in certain words like "I am not Catholic."
I would expect nothing less.
I appreciate that. No. I think to your point, love is complicated and love is confusing, and there's a lot of different ways people can find love, and it's worth broaching topics that may be uncomfortable for people so that they can consider alternatives in their existence.
I think it's funny how you are so into like smut and like romance novels, and you have like the most stereotypical like trope. You went from like enemies to lovers with your, yeah, that's so funny to me. Anyways, I hope everyone has a great week. Audrey, thank you again. Yeah. Joel, nothing?
We're deeply appreciative, Audrey. Thanks for hanging out with us. Come back sometime.
Soon. Yeah. Okay. Bye, guys.
We have many thanks for the use of our theme music, which is the song Drop by Ketsa. You can find more of their music online at ketsa.uk. You can also find Date These Guys online on Twitter and Instagram at Date These Guys, or visit our website at datetheseguys.org. If you have questions you'd like us to discuss on the podcast or marriage proposals for either of us, shoot us an email at datetheseguys@gmail.com.